The main focus of attention we should have when designing and building our application is precisely the user interface. Why? Because it's usually what it will determine if the application is liked by users and therefore used, and if it's effective or if, in the contrary, it is complex to use and users have to make an additional effort, which end up resulting on the application not being used, or used by obligation imposition, which in case you didn't notice is not good. So let's put some tips together that will make our applications attractive and usable, and therefore users will love them because they make their life easier instead of hating them because they complicate it. First of all, let's avoid what I call hacker interfaces, which will be these interfaces where we try to put all possible options on one screen. That won't be useful, especially on a mobile device screen, which is usually not particularly large. Therefore, the key is that each screen should contain the information that can be seen in a simple way, without straining the eyes, and use scrolling if we need to add more information. The next point to consider are the controls. They must be large and accessible enough to be handled with the fingers, and we also need to focus on the separation of the controls of this same line. It can be interesting to use small images or icons for certain actions instead of text, which generally facilitates the readability of the application. Finally, we have to keep in mind the navigation. When configuring the different screens, we have to make it clear that the user also perceives it, how to advance between the screens and how to go back, adding the corresponding controls to generate this functionality. With these 3 points, we will have an application that will be usable and functional. But usability does not only stay on the functional part, we also need to pay attention to the style of the application. It is important to choose a combination of colors and text fonts that are accessible. That is to say, let's again avoid the hacker interfaces. A black background with fluorescent green letters looks great in Matrix, but it tires the eyes after a while and probably our users won't appreciate the reference. It's better to choose more neutral backgrounds and text colors that have good contrast, but without being exhausting. This is also applicable to the text font. A creative typography may seem like a good idea at first, but it will probably tire the user, and if it's also difficult to read, it will result in a problem rather than an advantage. And we have to assume that we are going to make mistakes when designing and building the application. So, once it's in production, regardless of how many tests we have done, problems more or less serious will appear and we have to solve them. Some of these problems will be lack of functionality or suggestions from the user. This is what we call improvements, and we must try to incorporate them over time. An application that has no improvements is doomed to failure. For this type of situation, it is good to maintain a feedback channel with users, listen to what functionalities they lack and which one they think could be improved. Even also which functionalities are not used and can be removed to reduce the options and improve usability. All problems will be directly errors. Although our applications are low code, somehow we will have to tell the application what we want it to do. So at these points, we can make mistakes. It is important that when we see these errors are detected, we have some mechanism to review and correct them so they do not become an endemic problem of the application, and the application becomes unusable. Keeping all this in mind, it's important to understand that the creation of an application does not end with the application is deployed, but we have to continue evolving and correcting it while it's used.